Chapter 6, The Virus Factory. Take a good look at those Gothna recolors because that's the first and last we see of them. Up to this point it's been surveillance and the occasional sabotage here and there, but this time shit has finally gotten serious. According to Garen anyway. The gist of the Virus Factory in this chapter is that it's a plant in the Procket's base where their brainwashing ammo is made, and Garen wants us to shut it down for good. Like the previous chapters, this unlocks another part of the island, and it covers the remaining bottom third of the map. In other words, we have access to nearly all of Voyanui by this point. Likewise, there's a lot to cover down there, and no immediate rush to see it all at once. A quest will ask us to visit there when the time comes. Also in this chapter, I seem to bump into enemies more and more. By this point, you can probably see how broken the power launcher is. Inconspicuous hole in the building. The quest asks us to beat up a couple of stronghold guards by the entrance, but these appear to be normal fire Burnak. As the changing color implies, they are slightly more aggressive, and they remind me of the recolored fire Gothna we saw in the chapter intro. I don't think I've ever found a confirmation of this, but my running headcanon is that these guards got injected with a bit of the brainwash virus just like the Matoran. After all, they are right by the factory. Based off this, I also like to theorize that the recolored Gothna were not only an unused enemy guarding the factory, but infected with the virus as well, and it probably made them stronger in some manner. A reminder that, looking back, this brainwash virus was secretly Makuta's essence, so if it was applied to Rahi, I'd imagine they'd react similarly to the 2001 Rahi with infected masks. Yeah, I'm just gonna keep buffing technique until I get to 20. We start to bump into more of what feels like game padding. I think that once Atoa beat the guards and found the front door locked, they would automatically look for another way in without Garen's instruction. To the point where it would make more sense for that to be the immediate next step after defeating the guards. It's not as long as a trip as it could be, but it's still annoying to report back to Garen after every single task. Yeah, we're running all the way back to the Paraka Fortress to stare at some hole. Never thought I'd be calling that a chore, but here we are. I forgot that this brick on the map doesn't actually connect to the adjacent screen. Must have been an oversight. We have successfully stared at hole. But I'll tour the rest of the factory's perimeter to show it off. Looks kinda cool, not gonna lie. Very heliotrope core. But I think they put most of their energy into rendering the entrance. I zone out here for a moment. There are a couple of bungles in this recording that almost made me do another take at first, but then I also pulled a couple of cool stunts later, so I decided to keep the whole thing. Turns out that the air vent we found could conveniently fit a medium-sized Rahi. And if you remember from previous chapters, Pyrrhic happens to keep a pet Burnak around. So we're off to Pyrrhic's place. Cue the montage again. So the Burnak food we gave actually got his pet sick. I'm not sure how that happened, but it seems we need to fight a couple more Rahi to get a cure. Lifestone from a Fire Gothna, and an Energy Crystal from a Lava Ape. Fire Gothna are easy enough to find, but for Lava Apes, Pyrrhic suggests visiting the new area to find them. I did check, and if you're really pressed for time, you can technically fight the Lava Ape on the bridge for the crystal instead. However, I'm going to take the long route to visit Area 6 because the amount of useful dig spots in that zone makes it well worth the trip. I do find it funny that by this point in the game, the unkillable Lava Ape has become a common enemy, but the stupid Gold Nectan is still kicking our asses. I guess that's RPG power scaling for you. I can dig it for the time being. I am glad they have a couple stray fire Gothna on the fortress's perimeter, otherwise we'd have to circle all the way around the fortress just to break in, sneak out, and then make it to the bottom to reach Area 6. And that would be a long trip. I forgot what happened to the lifestone we stole in Chapter 1. Maybe it was fashioned into the usable lifestone item? I think that's what happened. This spot used to be blocked off. Welcome to Area 6. Yes, it covers that much. We'll still be doing enemy drop spoilers in every chapter, but this is basically the last set of dig item spoilers. Timestamp to skip both is on the screen. Dig spots were pretty dry the last couple chapters, but as this is the final area with dig spots, this is fittingly the mother lode. The territory is huge, so the likely idea is that you have several chapters to look for it all if you so wish. We finally start seeing some max level armor after so much medium armor, and there are a couple new weapons, Reavers and Ion Launchers, that I'll explain more about as I get them. And as is customary, some returning weapons show up in new elements. For enemy drops, we have 2 new mob enemies and a couple boss reveals. The Lava Ape drops way more than I first realized. The Greaves it drops overlap with the Fiku Spider, but it has 3 other items going for it as well. Continuing the Fiku similarities, it also drops an upgraded version of the Soul Stone. I only discovered this after recording, so I'm gonna have to come back and grind this enemy in later chapters. One thing to note about the blocking Lava Ape in the log bridge is that while it gives the same XP and the energy crystal during the Burnak quest, it doesn't drop the other items associated with the mob counterpart. Similar to how the guard Burnak gives Fire Burnak XP but doesn't seem to drop anything either. I wouldn't say the Shore Turtle's stone defense armor is necessarily worth grinding yet, since you can dig up an air equivalent, but it is another useful enemy for grinding shards. Lastly, by the time we get the Baraka's items, we'll already be a bit familiar with the gear and their guaranteed drops, so there's not much else to commentate on. The territory is so big that I had to map out the route for digging in advance, and I still get a little lost halfway through for a couple seconds. I don't usually wear defense, but with heavy armor, the highest level, our AP count is maxed out to 13. We can use, for instance, a launcher and a Zamor on the same turn. It could also allow for some new combos with higher AP weapons, like slashes. All the other buzzsaws are named Rippers, so that's a bit of an odd name. It's not a scythe, though maybe it can cut grain well either way. Cat's out of the bag for the launchers, so if you were fire and stuck using the ice power launcher previously, here's your equivalent. Oh boy. Really good at dodging, aren't you? And there's our energy crystal. Glad that's over with. Hope we don't have to fight anymore. Speaking of slashes, this area introduces Reavers, basically the slash upgrade. I dunked on slashes all the way back in Chapter 1, but the Reaver quickly grows on me in this recording as I try it out. I think it helps that it costs the same AP as a slash, but since it deals way more damage and we have a little more AP to spend, we can use it more effectively. Also, I know I called the slash spread damage impractical, but by using the Reaver so much, I did actually manage to demonstrate it in action several times. Which actually leads to a new nitpick, kind of a funny one. Killing a mob with collateral Reaver spread damage soft locks the turn, so you have to make sure it's not a finishing blow or you'll have to reset the fight. A bug in my VNOG? Inconceivable. Ion launchers are another spicy weapon. I think they're meant to kind of be a tour de force, one of the more powerful ranged options, but do keep in mind that they drain nearly all of your AP. From here to the right, there's a little bit of a pocket dead end, which I think I got a little lost in for a little bit back when I was a kid. Wouldn't be paying a visit there if there wasn't an item for our troubles, of course. Let's try out some new tech. Remember how we were just talking about Reaver splash damage? The Ion Launcher is a similar thing, but long distance, which I think is a lot more practical. The funniest part of Ion Launchers, though, is that they have an enhanced version with an even wider AoE, meaning this isn't even the final form. I think those are unlocked much later, though. Oops, Gotham ain't part of the fight yet. Stay still, you little scamps. And that's how it's done. At least they tested Ion Splash damage on kill, if not the Slash and Reaver. Won't be using the Ion Launcher immediately for similar reasons as when you first get the Slash, but the enhanced version is sure to be a treat. Now, bear with me as I get a little lost finding the next dig spot. The Reaver is actually brutal, Jesus. Not here either. Kind of going in circles right now. There you are. And it's a double feature. Similar to how the Earth Ripper is called a Reaper, the Fire Ion Launcher is called a Lava Launcher. Probably a nod to Hakan's weapon, and he inevitably drops it when we encounter him a couple chapters later. I always thought the Power Launcher looked more like Hakan's weapon, but I guess that was a coincidence. It took me a while to catch, but the launcher is actually Avak's parallel. Anyway, now our MP's all the way maxed out, to 6 movement points. We have full action, movement, and range now. Well, funny story about that last one, but I'll save it for post-game extras. I wanted to try out fighting shore turtles, but clearly I underestimated them and picked a rather terrible spot for one-on-one. They were clearly meant to be the toughest mob Rahi, stronger than apes but weaker than Master Nektan, and while they may not deal as much damage as either, they are fittingly well armored. Yeah, I'm gonna run out of ammo at this point. It's over. Really should have stuck to the harpoon. Then at least I could have kept it a one-on-one. Showed off the Reaver at least. Yeah, I'm taking the L. I'll fight him at a higher level, maybe with different weapons. At this point, I decide to take a short break. Over here is a dig spot that has neither an item nor a quest item in it. Like the ice fortress near Garen's, it seems to be unused. That won't be confusing with the Earth Reaper or anything. And for our last item... Hell yeah. As you may have guessed, heavy attack armor in the respective element is my endgame goal, so for Greaves, that's pretty much covered. Reaver's getting some more love, it seems. Okay, maybe a rematch won't hurt. I'll try to corner him first. Crap, he's slipping past. Slow but steady. And luck is in my favor this time. This last dig spot is for next chapter's quest. But while I'm here, there's one more thing I want to check out. I swear I'm getting some real lucky pulls with this Reaver RNG. I'm king of the world, baby! Okay, we can head back now. It's a long way to Pyrrhix, though. Another funny landmark for another time. Oh my god, how many more lava apes am I gonna have to kill? I already have enough energy crystals. I wanted one. One, I tell you, one. I go over it again later, but I think the glitch doesn't apply if the selected target survives the splash damage, but the adjacent target is killed. It only applies to the main target then. Why? Oh, come on. Another defense armor of air for the pile. Well, at least I'm out of ape hell now. I think I might have 6 or so extra, but here you go. Now the Burnak has run off, and we have to go find him. Pyrrhus says he probably dug himself in the ground, and the location is marked on our map, so it's light work. Friend acquired. His colors are notably different when deployed, though. A lot closer to a Protodermis Burnak than this tri-color scheme going on. But I still like him either way. The quest doesn't detect whether we found the Burnak, but that's alright. It seems we get to keep him for the rest of the game. Neato. He doesn't follow you around or anything, but we do use him again in another chapter or two. Rolling around at the speed of sound. Time for another fast-forward montage, I think. To Garen's place. Funny you say that, hardly any Nectans show up. Well, either way, it's finally time to storm the virus factory. First time in this recording discovering the reverse soft lock. Yeah, it basically does that. Running up to the hole triggers a cutscene, which is appropriate, I think. Go forth, my Burnak. Yeah, we get to play as him. If they wanted to go the extra mile, there could have been a combat section or two where he had to manage Burnak mode, but it's otherwise a cute little maze. I hit the lever. Avak's behind this, eh? Aw, kitty. Yeah, this virus factory is surprisingly empty. It's completely unguarded and it's kind of baffling. Maybe they wanted unique enemies and didn't have time to add them. I'm thinking about the Matoran escape depiction of the factory, with bubbling green pools of antidermis and gas leaking from pipes. This kind of feels more like an average warehouse, I guess. The hologram domes are kind of cool. Anyway, a new Paraka means it's time for another round of Bionicle bonus lore. There's a lot, but I'll try to keep it brief. Avak is the gang's weapons engineer, and probably one of the smarter Paraka next to Zaktan and VNOG. Before VNOG got hit with the spear, anyway. Aside from elemental stone and x-ray vision, Avak's freak power is creating a temporary cage customized to fit the target. If the target has fire powers, it may be a watery prison. If the target was Superman, it would be made of kryptonite, etc. The cage is potentially powerful as hell since it scales to the target, but it requires all of Avak's concentration to stay active, meaning the only way to escape it is if someone else distracts him, or if someone else breaks it from the outside. I thought that this power was what granted him status as the Dark Hunter's jailer, but apparently that was a bluff. None of his inventions are really cataloged aside from a killer motorcycle. Zammer launchers were apparently by the Ninra Ghosts, but he is able to MacGyver tools out of whatever's available, which in this case is useful for weapons manufacturing. While a jack of many trades, Avak's biggest weakness is actually hand-to-hand combat. Without the giant guns in his hands, he's suddenly and supposedly a wimp. I realize how poorly that aged. I would not want to meet him in high school. This has been your moment of Bionicle bonus lore. I think you mean the door is locked. Most of the Paraka do something in their pattern related to their backstory, but the room where you fight Avak does not showcase this well at all. I kind of blazed through the pattern without researching it properly in this run, but I have something saved for afterward to show it off better. The gist of his pattern is that his damage and knockback is really strong at mid-range, but if you end your turn adjacent to him, his attacks are really flimsy and he tries to run off, a play on his weaknesses at hand-to-hand. However, this cramped-ass room does not do a ranged character like him justice, even if I knew how it worked at the time. There is just too little space. I'm actually going to cut to a convenient test room left in the game to show off his pattern more properly. Nice grammar. His weapon of choice seems to be the power launcher, yeah. If you're not directly next to him, but are close enough to be in line, he will try to knock you away from him. And on the off chance I don't dodge it, it really packs a punch. To be honest, his arena probably should have just been this. It seems like his launchers also have ammunition. His power launcher has 8 shots per fight, just like mine. If he can survive his barrages, he's eventually forced to use his fists. As you can imagine, teleportation packs come in pretty useful for this fight if he happens to be a little out of reach. If you start your turn on an adjacent cell, he's guaranteed to use melee and basically waste his turn. But it helps that he basically can't use his launcher at this point. It would be funny if they did something with his cage power and you needed your Burnak or whatever to break free, or attacks related to traps on the floor, or if he had a giant gun machine like in a Inika Island assault, but that's maybe overstepping. On to the main course. It's Zaktan again, sure, why wouldn't it be? He does have an affinity for Antidermis. He works a bit differently the second time around with strong ranged attacks and weak melee, which is kind of the opposite of his behavior when you first fight him, but we just handled Avak who has a similar gimmick, so I think it makes sense. And if you get caught by the Nektan while he's active, they can stall the player while Zaktan keeps his distance, which is an interesting but annoying pattern complement. Not that I'm gonna follow that, I have a penchant for picking off Nektan one by one. Again, the cramped space makes a ranged fight like his rather easy, but I'll try to run away just to show him off. Starting to feel the burn. Now for up close and personal. I thought it was in my element for some reason, but no, it's ice regardless of who you play as. I don't know why. And we struck pay dirt. Again with the useless noble masks. But I can boost my attack substantially with this. Note to self, investigate range packs. Hold on, I need to pet the kitty. Alright, one more fast forward for the road. Another totally intentional demonstration of the Reaver bug. Again, I think it happens when the main target is killed, but the adjacent enemy survives. And that was Chapter 6. The quests themselves were pretty short, but the real meat was exploring more island. Chapter 7 will do its best to mix things up a little now that we have all the terrain. Until next time!